All right. I think we have started. Oh, we already have 5 attendees. Hey, everybody. Welcome in. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give everybody a few minutes to log on. We'd love to hear from you guys in the chat. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, how far along you are. We can tell you Dr. Amna here. She's about to pop any second now. So
I am 38 and some weeks right now. So anytime.
Home stretch. Have you been having any Braxton Hicks yet?
I have been having Braxton Hicks. I mean, Kim, you're pregnant with number 3. So this is my
third on the way.
See, I know. And I started these contractions. Gosh, these ones started early for me. So now it's like when they're uncomfortable, I'm like, do I have to time them?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're just like, this is fake, right? Like, this is not real.
Completely fake. I'm walking through it, right?
7 weeks, New York City. Hi, Angela. Thank you guys so much for being here. Hi, Ashley in Chicago. Oh, 33 weeks tomorrow. So you guys are hitting that third trimester.
You guys are in the 30s. Very nice.
I know. Home stretch. Man, it's like those last few weeks, they're brutal. There's no way around it.
I wonder if it's because I'm like a pediatrician and you know all the NICU stuff that's kind of in the background, but when you hit the 30s as well, it just feels really real that you're like 10 more weeks, 9 more weeks, 8 more weeks. It feels really, really real.
Oh, hi, Lawrence, 12 weeks. Welcome. Congratulations on hitting your 12-week mark. That's a huge milestone. How amazing. Marissa in Brooklyn, love it. Oh, baby's 3 months old. So we got some new mamas in here as well. So excited to meet you guys. We have 69 people. Thanks. It's so cool that you guys are here tonight. We're hoping that this will be helpful for y'all. And we'll get started in just a minute, do some introductions. Love hearing where you guys are from. I'm actually, you can see my skyline view. I'm in New York City for the first time in several years. I say post-COVID. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but
post-pandemic period. I think that's
yeah, there you go. Felt good. Feels good to travel again, ladies. Feels good. Get away from the kids.
I'm ready to go.
I know. It was wild. I had to fly through LAX last week and the airport was insane. So
oh wow. I know I did an IG live with a child psychologist today on disciplining children in public. And I told him, I said, we're all getting back out there. And I think we're a little rusty. We like let our kids do whatever in the house. And now we're like, straighten up your act.
Yeah. You're like, don't act like you've been on an iPad for a year. Take it away.
Did you save that Instagram live? Because I'm gonna.
Yes. Yes. He's amazing. Not to take away from this great discussion, but he is one of my favorites when it comes to child behavior and development. I did one with him a few weeks ago on whining and pouting. It's like the same tactics I use on my daughter. They work.
Okay. Need that.
Yep. I saved the IG live, guys.
So I'm so excited. I know we have 75 people. We're going to let people keep trickling in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Really excited to have everybody here. And I hate that we can't see all of your faces, but please utilize the Zoom chat, chime in, encourage each other, ask questions. We'll do our very best to answer everyone's questions today, but we'll kick it off. So I'm Kim Chappell. I head up marketing and comms for Bobbie. We are a new organic European style infant formula company that just launched last January. We are the only mom founded and led infant formula company in the US. And we're the first to launch, thanks Jada, we're the first to launch, first national brand to launch in the last 5 years. We were really trying to solve for the European Black market, which you will hear about and learn more about today. And we do want to educate people on that. And I'm here to just lead this conversation. I promise you, I'm not here to sell you formula. That's not why we're here today. We really just want to help you guys feel supported in your feeding journeys and help you understand what may be to come, because it's always unexpected when it comes to feeding a baby. So with that, I'll toss it over to Dr. Amna Hussain.
Hi everybody. It's so great to read all the positive energy in the chat function. My name is Dr. Amna Hussain. I am a board certified pediatrician. I'm also a board certified lactation consultant. I own a pediatric practice in New Jersey. That's where I live. I have a 3.5-year-old daughter. So she's my three-nager that we were just referencing about disciplining in public. And I am currently pregnant with baby number 2. I can show you my little bump, but it's not so little anymore. We are 38 in some weeks. So I am a proud member of Bobbie's advisory board, even as an IBCLC. As a pediatrician, I see a lot of parents who struggle with this decision. And I really love everything that Bobbie stands for. One of my favorites is it's a female-led company. So I am here to answer any questions I can for you guys tonight.
Great. And now I'm going to send it over to Jada Parks Chatterjee. She's amazing. I'll let her introduce herself.
Thank you, Kim. I'm so happy to be here with you guys today. I put on makeup today. I was so excited. I didn't leave my house and take a flight yet, but I think it's on the horizon. I am a registered nurse and a lactation consultant. I work with moms and babies, and I have been for over a decade now. It's just probably one of the best things that I get to do is to support parents during their feeding journey, prenatally, providing education, supporting them unravel what their preferences and decisions are, which we'll talk about today. And then, of course, being able to snuggle with the babies. I have a 7-year-old, and I'm very, very happy to be a member of the mother board with Bobbie and just watch and participate and engage with this fantastic woman-led team that is really shaking the stigma. So I'm so happy to be here and very happy to see now 89 participants. And I just want to extend gratitude to Hatch Gal. I've been a fan for a very long time, and you just continue to partner with all the right people in order to make sure that the information that's needed gets to where it needs to go. Thank
Awesome.
you
So much, Jada. Thanks for being here. All right, sending it over to Natalie Kynan. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Kanon. I am a lifestyle blogger based in Dallas. I'm a mom to 2 little girls, Mila and Dylan. Mila is 3.5, also a three-nager, and Dylan is 8 months. So I very recently kind of went through the whole feeding journey for the second time. And I will say both experiences were different. I'm sure we'll get into that later, but I'm just excited to be here to share what my experience has been, just so, you know, moms and moms to be can kind of see that we're all unique. Every experience and journey is different. And selfishly, I'm going to learn from everyone else on the panel as well. So I'm excited to be here.
Great. Thanks so much, Natalie. Thanks for sharing that. All right. So we're going to kick it right off. I think, you know, a lot of you guys have mentioned how far along you are. You're pregnant. You're about to embark on this huge journey. You've probably been putting a lot of thought into your birth plan, how you're going to have this baby, and some thought probably into breastfeeding and how you want that to go. And I just want to set the stage here that birth plans are often like feeding plans, and they don't always go as planned. So we're here to help you guys understand what may happen, the options that you have on the table, and how to be confident and educated before you head into that feeding journey. And so I think the first thing we want to talk about is a lay of the land in a way. I'm going to share my screen. Don't worry, I'm not going to do a boring presentation. It's just a few slides just to kind of give you guys a bit of, you know, again, a lay of the land of formula, because it's not something that you talk about really, if I'm right, when you're pregnant. You're so focused on, I got to get the Lanaso breast pads. I got to get the nipple cream. I got to get my breast pump. I got to go to my breastfeeding class, and I got to have my lactation consultant. And those things are important. I'm not discrediting that. What I'm saying is it's also important to start to educate yourself on, what do I do if that doesn't work out as I'm planning? Because what you want to avoid, in my opinion, is a middle of the night, 2 a.m. Google search, or like our founder ending up at the CVS and trying to figure out what's the best formula for her while her baby's crying and hungry. So just to kind of make you guys feel supported in that decision, should you find yourself there, we want you to know that there's 83% of parents in the US that turn to formula in their first year. So you are not the minority. We call it the silent majority at Bobbie, people that actually use formula. We just don't really talk about it as much as maybe we should. Also, it's important to know about US formulas is that almost half of them contain corn syrup. So it's really important that you guys do the work to understand what is the values that you have for your formula journey, should you have one. Is it convenience that it's on the corner store? Is it price point and you want to go to Costco? Or is it, you know, not having a corn syrup in your formula. There's a lot of different ways to get to what you put in your bottle, but it's important to know what is in it. The US does not have any regulations right now around corn syrup and formula. So 100% of your carbs can actually be sourced from corn syrup in your bottle. Bobbie's corn syrup free. Shameless plug. Okay. It's also important to note that DHA. So DHA, as we all know, is an important nutrient for brain building, for eye development. And in the US, unfortunately, there is no minimum requirement for DHA in infant formula. So while labels on the front say DHA and ARA, the only way that you can know how much is actually in it is if you call the 1-800 number on the back of that can and ask. It ranges from 5 milligrams up to 20 milligrams. We're the only formula in the US that actually meets the EU standard for DHA, which is 20 milligrams. So we're at the very, like Bobbie's at the very bottom of what would be allowed in the EU and at the very maximum of what there is option-wise in the US, just to give you guys a sense. So again, it's about reading that label and kind of digging in and asking the right questions about that formula. So 40% of parents say that their feeding plans don't go as planned, specifically because of their birth experience. So if you have this like glorious natural home birth and you are just feeling like a goddess, like the baby's on the boob, I applaud you. If you find yourself like me having an emergency C-section and exhausted and tired and you look like a balloon that needs to be popped out of the hospital, it's stressful. And so understand that whatever your birth experience is will absolutely impact that first bit of your feeding journey. And that's okay. It's totally normal. Okay, I want to touch on this too really quickly. We'll dive into this more later, but European formulas, you know, they're a hype. They're a thing. We all know about them. And they are not regulated here in the US, and they're technically illegal. And we're starting to sort of see the fallout of that for consumers and for parents who are purchasing this type of formula. These are two very popular sites that people shop on. And for the past week, they've been down. And it's unclear what's going on. We've been hearing that the FDA is actually taking some enforcement against these sites for the first time ever. So we do think it's important. Dr. Amna is going to talk about this a little bit more just from a strictly pediatric perspective on options and understanding risk when purchasing from a black market like European formula. And I'm going to end with this one, which is a powerful stat that we sourced a couple of years ago in 2019 at Bobbie, but it's that 2/3 of parents actually feel guilty for feeding their baby formula. And I want to sit with that for a second, because what this says to us is that 2/3 of parents feel guilty for feeding their baby, period. And how awful is that? And I think that's where I want to kick off this discussion is the guilt, the disappointment, the shame that we feel when things don't go as planned. And I know, Dr. Amna, you see it firsthand with patients, and Jada, you do it, you as well, you know, bedside with some of these women. Can you talk to us about like what that experience is like? Where does this disappointment and shame come from? Why do we feel this way as women?
Sure. So I'd be happy to lead a little bit, but I think it actually goes back to a little bit of that illusion of the birth plan that you had mentioned, Kim. So one thing I always tell mothers, and I'm not an obstetrician, but I do meet with families prenatally and we get a chance to talk. And I always actually ask them about their birth plan and their feeding plans and what they plan to do with vaccines, etc. And I always remind them that your birth plan, I want you to know that the word plan is really hard to throw in there, because plan makes it feel like you did all the right things and this is how it's going to happen, right? We plan a wedding, we plan baby showers, but your birth plan is actually a wish list in an ideal setting. And sometimes things aren't ideal. And I think you have to think about it the same way when it comes to feeding. Everybody says, this is what we should be doing, breastfeeding, right? I breastfed, your mom breastfed, right? She breastfed for 2 years. Your best friend is still breastfeeding. And some people forget all the hazy details that kind of go into those first few weeks, not to mention there's a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of situations that can impact the breastfeeding relationship. And that's what I call breastfeeding, a relationship, because it's between two people. The mother or the person who is breastfeeding or chest feeding and the infant. And so there's two people. And that's what, when it comes down to feeling guilty about that, always the parents take it upon themselves that they feel guilty. But they have to remember sometimes it's baby's fault, guys. Sometimes things happen and that baby won't latch. I was one of those parents, and it was really stressful. I was exclusively pumping, and I really worried about my mental health. And I knew I was not in a good place because I was a doctor, and I saw all those warning signs that I was like, my marriage isn't going well. I'm not really happy right now. And this pump is really affecting my mental health. So I think it's very important. And sometimes when I kind of candidly have that conversation with parents, it's usually around the time that mom is going back to work. We're talking about pumping. And I have had some mothers who just frankly ask me that, oh, really? You pumped? You thought it was hard too? It's like a relief. It's like a girls' club or something that we finally feel like, wow, I'm allowed to feel that this is hard. And you 100% are allowed to feel this is hard, because it is. Parenting is not easy, and it doesn't get easier. You just get better. And so I think being able to acknowledge that openly, the way Bobbie is doing, I think is really important. Enough of this like elephant in the room that we're not talking about. I think it's really, really important to have the discussion early on, whether it be the parent's choice or not. And I think that really helps when it comes to safety as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the things that I like to do when I'm teaching prenatally is to talk about like having a feeding preference or a blueprint, same as with a birth preferences or birth blueprint, because I agree, it definitely removes the very task of checking off the box if you've completed it or not. And I love the fact that we don't know what the baby's personality is going to be. That's kind of like the highlight of meeting your new baby. And so thinking about your feeding journey with your baby as like a dance. And, if you're choosing to offer your baby food, nursing your baby at the breast or chest, or if you're planning on giving formula, like if that is a part of your plan, then figuring out, how do I safely and successfully dance with this baby feeding at the breast or feeding with the bottle? And what are my preferences? We can't, I think the guilt comes when my parents just were not aware of the other possibilities of things that could occur, such as having a cesarean section from emergency and being separated from the baby. Like you don't think about those things, right? And you shouldn't. Having a baby is generally something very joyous, and we want to be able to hold on to that. But I do think that when my parents have a preference of, I'm okay to feed the baby if, jaundice, weight loss concerns, are an ineffective latch. Those are all basic things that we know we have to address for thriving purposes, and also to ensure that the parent that's feeding has comfort. But then making sure that we don't leave wherever our birthing center is, our place of birth, that we leave with the basic information that we need to know in order to transition before you see your pediatrician, because it may be 2 or 3 days.
And you guys brought up a good thing, which is feeding tying to mental health. And I think for all the pregnant moms in there, just to set the stage, once you start your breastfeeding journey, you are every 3 hours, you are either pumping or you have a baby on your boob, until you can get through those longer stretches of the night. But during the day, it's every 3 hours for months, that you are committing to this. And it's a beautiful experience. But it is exhausting on your mental health. And I think there becomes a tipping point that I want to talk about, which is, how do you know what the tipping point is of when that, like, you maybe need to start to look into other options rather than be so steadfast in reaching some sort of like time milestone. And I kind of want to throw it to Natalie, because you experienced that sort of mental health piece of it firsthand. And I would think it just could be great advice to hear what your own experience was for these moms.
Yeah. Gosh, I feel like I kind of went, went through it all. So I feel very lucky that I was able to breastfeed. I wanted to breastfeed. Um, it does take a lot of time. It's a beautiful thing, but it is definitely time consuming. And I was starting to get to a point, gosh, it was probably 7 months in, where I just felt like my body wasn't producing enough. I felt like I was feeding, every time I fed my baby, it was, an hour at a time. If I, tried to take her off any sooner, which just may sound like crazy to y'all. Just for the record, before I had a baby, all of this right now would just be gibberish. I'd be like, what is about to happen to my life? So just know I've been there if this is also new to you. But once I was in it and feeding, anyway, I got to a point where I just felt like I was spending so much time, like she wasn't getting enough. So it was weighing on me, where I felt like, okay, I need to supplement with formula. I need to try and bring something in. But they started talking about the guilt earlier, which none of us should feel guilty. I truly believe fed is best. I truly, truly believe that, no matter how you want to feed your baby, it's your baby, it's your choice. But there still is that, guilt of my body, I'm not able to do this anymore. So I worked to try and get formula going. There was I won't go into it. There's a whole nother issue, just getting her to take a bottle. In hindsight, I wish I would have introduced the bottle sooner, because that was definitely an obstacle for us. But I will say, once we transitioned my baby girl Dylan to formula, it was kind of incredible, which it's kind of like an emotional thing for me, because I felt like all of a sudden she was really thriving, which was incredible. Obviously, I'm so happy, but you start to feel that guilt of like, why didn't I, do this sooner? Again, every single person's journey is going to be different. What happened with me is not going to happen to you. It's not going to happen to the other girl in the chat. Like, every situation truly, truly is unique. But for me, I just saw how much she thrived when she was on formula. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, I'm feeding her within 15 minutes. I have so much time in my day. What am I going to do with myself? All of a sudden I was feeling better. I was feeling more comfortable and confident and able to get more things done, which was a plus. Again, this is just, my personal situation. It may not take you super long to breastfeed or feed, but it's just one of those things where I got to a point where I knew we had to introduce formula, because I felt like I was starting to lose it a little bit, just my nerves and patience. And I didn't want that, because I obviously love feeding my baby and want what's best for my baby.
Yeah. I think your experience is totally normal. Sorry, Jada, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, I'm so grateful for you to share that. Like, that's very, very vulnerable of you to share that, because it is what I hear all the time, right? Baby's been eating for an hour, like every hour and a half. This is driving me crazy. When I was seeing patients in person, like as a private lactation consultant, I could sense the tensity in the environment when I rang the doorbell. Like, you can just tell. As soon as you walk to the door, there's a sign on there for the Amazon person. I'm not shouting out anybody in the chat box. But if there's a sign on the door for the Amazon person because you have a new baby at the house, I already know we have a lot of things that we need to unravel, right? So then I just come in knowing, like, okay, I'm ready with some tea, because I have to make sure that my parent is relaxed. And then we have to figure out, right? Even though we can still give the baby formula, we do want to figure out, like, what is going on? Why is this baby eating for an hour at a time every 2 hours, right? Like, there are some things that we want to unravel in order for us to really be able to make an assessment and see, okay, like, are there other recommendations or other consults that we need to pull in? Because the baby's going to continue to grow. And one of the things we know about a baby's oral anatomy is that, there's lots of things that could be going on in a baby's oral anatomy that could be contributing to a very long feeding at the breast. Now, I'm from Louisiana, so I'm okay with my breastfeeding now, all right? But the amount of attention that my little small human, and how excited he was to see my breast often over and over again, I knew after 28 and a half months, yes, he would still be breastfeeding. I knew that I no longer was excited to feed him. And that's when I, listened to my body and made a decision like, okay, how am I going to now take him through a proper weaning process that's going to be good for the baby, but that's also going to be supportive to my mental health. So I think that one of the things that we could do better as just like women taking care of our bodies is really listening to our bodies and being okay with whatever message it is that your body is telling you. And, call someone, like someone in your village, whether that's myself or any one of the persons here on the phone, in order to say, hey, I'm feeling this. Is this normal? Is this okay? What do you think? And the answer is always, yes, it is normal. Write it down and then mark time on when you felt that way so you can be able to share that. Because as your baby grows and things get better, just like Natalie was able to identify, once she gave her baby formula, after 15 minutes, she was like, oh my goodness, I have my life back. I mean, that is thriving. Everybody's got to thrive. The baby's got to thrive, and the parent and the other people in the household have to thrive as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something else too that I was hoping Dr. Amna could talk about. And this is where like we talk about these like feeding wars, right? That happen on social media. It's like breast versus formula. And in reality, that's not what is happening. 70% of parents are doing both.
Mm-hmm.
They're supplementing their breast milk with formula. And sometimes that formula is keeping their breast milk going longer. And I'm wondering, Dr. Amna, if you can talk about kind of that switch that people have in their mind where it's like, oh, once you introduce formula, like that's it. And it's really not the case. It's actually the two can work together quite well.
Absolutely. And I think that we are a very polarizing society because it makes it easier for us, breast milk versus formula or soy versus not soy. I think somebody asked about that. High fructose corn syrup versus not high fructose corn syrup. Can I introduce baby-led weaning or should I just do purees? And I am a very much as a millennial parent and as a millennial pediatrician, walk the line kind of individual. And I always try to think about the safety of the mother and the baby. So I want to say that, everybody says, why does everybody say breast is best or fed is best? Well, because we have a lot of data, and I'll say the WHO, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the USDA, all say that breastfeeding for the first 6 months is recommended. So you get this in your head and you're like, this is what everybody says. However, maybe many women don't understand and many parents aren't aware of in general is that these organizations also recognize there's multiple reasons why a parent needs to start formula for a child. So I want to be clear that formula is a life-saving intervention. And I literally say those words sometimes in the room to parents, that it's not what is best. This actually can be a life-saving intervention for many children, and has been. There's literally babies who are alive today because of formula. And if you just kind of let that sink in for a minute, it really changes your perspective. And it takes the whole context out of I'm a bad mom per se, but just thinking about this is sustenance, this is nutrition. And I'm firmly pro mom and pro baby, but when moms or parents are shamed for their choices, I find that they begin to question those choices, and then we go down a slippery slope. And that slippery slope might be, for example, oh, let me just maybe not do formula, but instead, maybe I can ask my friend for some of her breast milk. That's also not regulated. Or if you do end up going down the formula slope, well, maybe these European formulas are better. And then we go into looking online. Now that's a completely different issue altogether as well, because there's safety involved in that. And as a pediatrician, I always think of, again, safety of the child. And so you have to think about, there's different size scoops, there's different labels. Hypoallergenic means something completely different in Europe. And in fact, you actually need like a doctor's prescription for some of those formulas. There's different instructions. They're all in different languages. I mean, I've even had a parent before that says, well, it's okay, my husband reads German. And I was like, okay, that's great for you and your husband, but what about the rest of the 90 families I can name off the top of my head whose husbands do not speak German? So there's unofficial vendors, there's unofficial ways to really obtain these formulas. And I think that when you think about feeding your baby, what do you want? You want a healthy, happy, thriving baby at the end of the day. And then we think about the means that we got to obtain this formula. And then we're like, oh, let's just not think about that. Let's not talk about that. But no, let's talk about it actually, because it's important. We're all educated individuals and we should be learning about these things and talking about these things openly. I think that's really, really important, Kim.
Yeah, thank you for adding that perspective as well. And I think just, as a mom, truly, 3 years ago with my daughter, have a vivid memory of thinking I needed to buy German formula.
Yeah.
Because I was feeling so guilty about switching to formula. And I was using Google Translate at 2 a.m. with a crying baby on my hip while trying to figure out how to make my first bottle. I was sweating, like I was legit sweating. It was terrible. And that kind of brings me to the next piece of it, where I want moms that are on this call to understand and feel confident going in and making that first bottle. You guys would be shocked at the questions that we get to our customer support. They have a text message service. We get texts all day long from parents. And it's really like when you go to make that first bottle, you're like, wait a minute. It seems so simple, but like, how do I do this? I'm curious, Natalie, like what was your first bottle experience? Were you sweating? Like, how did it go?
I feel like it was the exact same thing. This is so easy. I feel like an idiot. I still somehow feel like I'm going to mess this up. No, I mean, thankfully we have Google and we have, Bobbie website, whatever it is, to figure it out. But no, it's overwhelming. I feel like in general, it can be, isolating sometimes. Just as a mom, you get in your head so much where you think you're alone with everything, you're doing the wrong thing, or you're going to mess something up. But I think if you can just remind yourself that every mom has these thoughts, it's going to be okay. Like you will figure out the answer. You will be able to make that bottle of formula. It'll put you at ease a little bit.
I try to tell parents, try not to make it overly complicated for yourself. Of course, yes, you could add less and it becomes, more dilute. You add more, it can become more concentrated. So you just follow the instructions, super easy. If water goes first, add water first. If they say add powder first, add powder first. Super simple. The water as well, like just the water that you drink, please. I'm also very against the parenting industry. I feel like they run a lot of scams on parents. So that's why I tell them, like, don't need to go out and buy gallons of baby water. Whatever water you drink is totally safe for the baby's formula.
Yeah. It's one of the number one questions we get is, what kind of water do I use? Do I need to use bottled water, distilled water? Do I need to sterilize it and boil it first? Can I use tap water? What if I'm on well water? So I think this is an important conversation to have because it seems so basic, but it is important. The research that we have at Bobbie and our experts advise that if you're on well water, you should probably boil it first before putting it into your baby's bottle. If you're in a place that has safe tap water and you drink that and you're comfortable with it, you can use tap water for your baby's bottle. Distilled water, another option, but going and buying, I think it's labeled nursery water at major retailers. Go ahead, Dr.
I'll give you an example of where tap water wouldn't be safe for. And you guys remember a few months ago when Texas's like entire electric grid, Natalie, do you remember that?
Yes.
You remember that, my Texan over there? So that was a moment where, hey, pediatricians and parents are on high alert that no, the water coming out of your pipes isn't clean right now. You shouldn't be drinking that. And no, we shouldn't be making baby formula. So absolutely. That was a really difficult, very difficult time for many, many families to be able to get clean water. But that is a very unique situation. Otherwise, the water that comes out of your pipes that you drink, it should be safe. And I have very many families who worry about, I don't know, Kim, if this question comes in, fluoride levels, etc. You can absolutely get these things tested. Fluoride in the water is just very safe. It will be even healthier for your little baby's teeth that are coming underneath their gums.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So, again, backing that up, the water, hopefully you guys feel that you've got that squared away. always put the water in the bottle first and then mix the formula, because you want to make sure that the levels are right. If you put the powder in first and then add the water, it kind of messes up how many ounces is actually in there. Let's talk about temperature, because that's another big thing. So we advise 100-degree temperature, because that's for optimal reconstitution, meaning shaking the bottle, the formula powder is going to mix well in warm water. And we also advise warm water because it's going to match the temperature of breast milk. If you're making that transition to from breast milk to formula, you know, you guys will learn, or new moms on this call know, your breast milk's pretty warm. Like, it's coming out, you know, when you hold those bags of pumped milk, it's warm. And so if you try to give your baby room temperature formula, they're most likely going to reject it, because they're like, what the hell is this? I didn't ask for this, mom. But is there anything you guys want to add on?
For me.
Yeah. Do you guys want to add anything on temperature and how that can really make or break that introduction of formula experience for baby?
Well, one of the things I want to say, I just want to backtrack just a little bit, because I think that natural disasters are happening more common now. And so we're talking about the southern states. And so we want to have a plan, right? Once again, like, it's like, what now you need to have an emergency plan. If you have small children that are under the age of 2 years old, you do want to have clean water that is available in the event that your lights go out, or that your water pipes are frozen over, or there's a lot of flooding in the area and you don't have access to clean water. If I'm not mistaken, I think the recommendation is to have at least a gallon per person in your home per day. So that's something that, you know, is kind of like a part of your parenting emergency pack. I dropped in the chat 98.6 for water. And the only reason why I like that number, because sometimes for parents, they get a little bit, it's a lot of numbers to remember, but 100 degrees is kind of hard to finagle. Like, is 100 degrees okay? Because 100.4 degrees, I need to take my baby to see the doctor. So I just stick to 98.6, or if you feel the water when it comes out on your arm, in order to make sure that it's not too warm for the baby. I don't think it's necessary to warm bottles that you have pre-made in the refrigerator. You can prepare formula specifically up to 24 hours in advance. I highly recommend for my type A parents and my B positives out there to like make the formula for the day and place it in the coldest part of the refrigerator. In order to knock the chill out, you can run it underneath the faucet with warm water or even hot water just to knock the chill out. And you can do the same thing for human milk as well. It's good in the refrigerator for up to 7 days. Once again, you can knock the temperature out with a little bit of with a little bit of warm water, knock the chill out.
Yeah, thank you for that advice. I'm also eager to get into some of these Q&As. Sorry, I've been so following this chat, and I hope you guys are getting some good tangible advice from this event and how to actually have the confidence to make that first bottle, which I did not have. So one of the questions that I want to address, someone asked about the use of soy oil in our Bobbie formula, which I'm more than happy to talk about. So we get a lot of questions about like, why don't you use olive oil? Why don't you use avocado oil? And while we wish we could, there's something called GRAS, which is generally recognized as safe by the FDA. And it's a very specific blend of fats that make up the nutrient content in infant formula. And it's specific because it's been proven that this is going to be what your baby needs to thrive and grow. So what we are proud of at Bobbie, while we have not been able to change what is registered as GRAS just yet, we are excited because our soy is one part of a 3-part fat blend that's alongside organic coconut oil and organic sunflower and safflower oil. And our soy is organic as well, which is part of I think it's like only 6% of soy in the US is organic, and most of it is conventional. And the concern often with soy when it's conventional is that it's pesticides, it has GMOs, that it's, you know, adding to the issues that come with soy. Ours is highly refined and removing those phytoestrogens that people worry about. And it's important to you guys know it's soy oil, it's not soy protein. We're not talking about the same thing that's in edamame or soy milk or some of those concerns that have come up with soy over the past few years. So I hope that kind of helps answer your question. I'm not a nutritionist and I'm not trying to be. I'm just answering generically on, what I know about our product and the soy that's in our product. So hopefully that answers it. Next up, so from Salma, she wants to ask a question. I started breastfeeding my son as soon as he was born, but once I got home from the hospital, I introduced the bottle with formula, but I knew I wanted to breastfeed, so I had to relactate because he did not want the breast. But once I started that the pediatrician said he was underweight, and I continued and didn't want to give him formula. I was giving him Similac, but now I'm expecting, can I still breastfeed? So kind of a loaded question. I'm going to maybe hand this to Jada or Dr. Amna. Do you guys have any advice for this mama?
I mean, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, so what I hear in the question is formula was given, and I'm going to make the assumption that it was given with a bottle with a nipple. And it's likely that the baby then created a preference because the milk comes out of the bottle with a nipple very fast, right? It literally, if you turn it upside down, it just drips out really quickly, and the baby becomes acclimated with that flow. Whereas when the baby is drinking at the breast or chest, their oral anatomy movements are just completely different, and they have to work a little harder, right? So that may have been where the concern is. So I always recommend that you follow whatever recommendations your pediatrician has given you. But you can always continue to provide your baby with breast milk at the breast. That can be while someone else is making a formula bottle, you can be offering the breast, or maybe afterwards or at a nap time if you want to offer the breast in order for your body to release the hormones needed in order to increase milk supply and demand. Dr. Hussein, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think that there's a few things going on here. When we use the word relactate, it really depends on which time frame we're talking about in. So you absolutely, I will say that you can definitely breastfeed your baby even afterwards. Sometimes you might need a little bit more help, and that little bit more help may come in the form of prescription medications. That's why sometimes you do need to see an MD IBCLC to kind of guide everything. So when you use that word, you just want to be careful. But if she is looking to breastfeed this baby, she says she's pregnant right now. Is that what I think she said? I'm expecting, can I still breastfeed? Yes, you definitely still can. So I'm going to answer that question, that can you breastfeed while you're expecting? Yeah, you totally can.
Awesome.
And actually, there's some really cool studies that show your breast milk can be different for like a toddler versus the infant that you're actually nursing. So it's really cool.
Awesome. We're getting a lot of questions about how to introduce formula, which is like the number one question we get at Bobbie, right? How do you actually do that transition? And Natalie, I know you have a firsthand experience, and then we have some advice. Do you kind of want to talk about how you were able to get your baby to transition from being exclusively breastfed to being partially formula fed?
Yeah, I mean, first off, you can learn from maybe my mistakes of wishing I maybe introduced the bottle a little sooner. So I exclusively breastfed about 7 months. So getting my baby to take the bottle proved to be a little bit difficult, but we got there. It'll happen. If you ever find yourself in that situation, just know it will happen. You'll get there. But for me, we started doing a bottle a day, and I don't know I'm sure these two are going to have expert advice, but just my personal, what we did was introduced a bottle a day. Then it went to 2. I continued to breastfeed as well. And then just, as we went on, I, slowly started producing less and less. And it just got to a point where she was taking a bottle the whole time. Honestly, it's intimidating at first. You're kind of like, how is this going to go? But your baby just figures it out, and everything. I mean, it may be bumpy along the way, but they figure it out. And, like I said earlier, she's thriving now on the formula. So
yeah, there's a couple of tactics that we advise on this front where if you're a breastfeeding mom and you want to start introducing formula, some parents are nervous to mix that formula with breast milk in case baby refuses it. And then all of a sudden you're throwing away your precious liquid gold that you might have spent hours pumping or putting in your freezer. So what you could do is if you say you're giving a 4 ounce, usually give 4 ounces, do 2 ounces of breast milk in a bottle and do a separate bottle with 2 ounces of formula. And when the baby's done chugging the breast milk, switch it in with the bottle of formula. You can mix formula, any formula, with your breast milk, and just do how you would do that is put your breast milk in the bottle, put your water in the bottle, then scoop your formula in and mix, and then top that up with however many ounces of breast milk. And again, making sure that the temperature is right. If you're actually switching formulas from one formula to a different one or to Bobbie, someone just asked this in the chat, you guys are getting a free can. What if I want to switch? We do not suggest mixing formulas at Bobbie just because there is different, I don't know what type of formula you're on or how that mixes with our formula. So we do suggest that you kind of rip the Band-Aid off and introduce that full bottle of Bobbie to a baby during the day, so you can keep an eye and make sure they don't have any negative reaction. And we're here to support through our tech support. Let us know how it goes. But if you're on a routine infant formula, switching to Bobbie should really be no big deal. Anything else on that front?
Yeah, I wanted to add just one thing that I always try to tell families when they mix breast milk and formula in a bottle, is that formula does have certain rules about having to discard it after, let's say you make a 4 ounce bottle and your baby is just, totally throws you off and only drinks 3 ounces. And 2 hours go by and you might have to actually discard that formula for safety reasons, right? Breast milk actually has live antibodies in it that allow it to stay stable a little longer. So your breastfed baby could still technically get that same bottle, let's say, of just pure breast milk a few hours later, and it's safe. So the only thing you kind of have to be careful about is that if you mix the two, you might end up throwing out some breast milk, just because you should definitely err on the side of caution if there's formula in that bottle. So I always tell parents that's a good tactic that Kim said, but maybe if you're like, my baby inconsistently takes 4 ounces, then maybe you stick to just adding the volume that that he or she will take. That way you don't cry over your spilt breast milk or your thrown out breast milk.
Yeah.
There were some really good questions, Kim. I was thinking about one, how many ounces baby got, and I thought I'd piggyback on that. And how do you know if your baby's getting enough? Because I also see that question.
Yeah, I think how do you know if your baby is getting enough is probably the number one stressor of being a new mom. You're like, when you give your baby a bottle, you know exactly how many ounces they have had to drink or not. When you have them on your boob, you're really hoping that they're getting what they need from your breast. So if you guys could help us understand that, I think that would be probably the best piece of advice for parents on this call today.
Sure. So as a type A, very detail oriented number person in medicine and science, I totally agree. It threw me off. And I think that it's also that we do a disservice when we tell moms every 3 hours, 8 times a day, your baby should be eating. And then you go home and you have a baby who's like nursing 24/7 or, like 12 feeds in 24 hours. And you're like, is something wrong with me? Is something wrong with my breast? Is something wrong with my supply? So instead, I'll tell you from an objective standpoint, and this is straight what I tell my parents too. We look at weight gain. We look at the quality and the quantity and the quality of the diapers. So I want to see in the first days of life, it's one wet diaper, first day of life, second day of life, 2 wet diapers, third day of life, 3 wet diapers. After about 5 days, your baby should be putting out some good wet diapers. Poop is a different situation. Some breastfed babies poop each time. Some breastfed babies don't poop for weeks. I look at the baby and the baby's comfort. So don't fixate too much on numbers if you can help it, but those are the ones that we look at. So you don't have to worry about, I'm only pumping X amount, how many ounces should be in this bottle for this baby. If your baby is thriving and growing, that's all that really matters. And another thing I'll say is don't really worry about pumping to feed your freezer. One thing I try to tell women is try to pump to feed your baby and maybe for your comfort, but don't feed your freezer. And then lastly, because we were talking about, how do you know if you're getting enough ounces and how do you know if is the feeding cues. And I think that's really helpful, especially for parents, because you see your babies every day and you'll be able to identify with the guidance of your pediatrician what a satisfied baby will look like, what a satiated baby is going to look like, versus your baby's up in the middle of the night screaming and crying, but they actually don't want to eat. That's not a hungry baby then. That's probably just a baby who is upset for another reason. And this is, important to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And when your baby is not getting enough in those first couple weeks, it's scary because things can go south really quickly. It's called failure to thrive. Do you guys want to talk about what you've seen actually come into your office or come in, as Jada, you've helped people too, who have tried so hard to breastfeed, but didn't see those cues. It gets serious pretty fast, right?
Yeah, it does. I typically see babies in the first 72 hours, first 100 hours of life. And so if you deliver inpatient, then your baby is weighed every 24 hours in order to check for weight loss. We are expecting the baby to lose some weight. However, we're looking at the hours of life for the baby and how much weight they are losing over time. We're also looking at jaundice levels. So I always like to make sure that my parents are checking their baby's eyes and their skin for a yellowing color or tint. That's a good reason to just reach out. It's not uncommon for babies to have jaundice. However, we do check jaundice levels inpatient every 24 hours in order to confirm that they're trending at the right rate. But if you're home at 2 weeks of life and you think that maybe your baby looks like my background, that's a good reason for you to reach out to your pediatrician and say, I just would like, here's what I'm seeing, and maybe we can check. The other thing is ensuring that what we have your ideals of your bottles prepared. Like if you know you're going to give your baby formula, someone asked how many ounces, and I'll pull it up for you and just kind of drop it into the chat. Oh, she found it. But it is nice to have an idea, because I think that when you go home and you're sleep deprived, especially those first few weeks, then it's really challenging to discern if the baby is, drinking at the breast, and that thriving is babies not waking up. We're looking for them to wake up every 3 to 4 hours, right? They're naturally doing that. If they're not waking up for feeds, that's a reason for you to wake your baby up. We don't want newborn babies sleeping more than 4 hours. You want to wake your baby up and offer food. Sometimes it may be easy to have that food ready for them. So if you're exclusively breastfeeding, I would recommend hand expressing milk so that it is available for the baby, because now we want to get calories in. I also recommend that if your baby's been sleeping a lot through the day, that at night, you probably want to wake up and feed that baby. And part of that is because if you're feeding your baby human milk, your body has the most amount of fat that's available at night. And part of that is due to the reason of your cortisol levels being lower. And that fat that's available for the baby is really smart. They're waking up for that fat because that fat helps add value to their neurological system, and it helps with their growth and thriving. So we want to wake up and feed those babies if we are feeding the babies human milk, and we never want to let our babies sleep more than 4 hours.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the biggest myths of parenthood is never wake a sleeping baby.
I know.
Right? It's like, no, those first few weeks, you need to go in there and wake up that baby and breastfeed them or bottle feed them to make sure that they are gaining that weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Any other questions, but I think I think that's really important. I think when it comes to feeding as well, I think one really, really important thing, because you hit on the word failure to thrive, is that a lot of parents, and we're talking about sleep too, is that when a baby doesn't get enough calories, they kind of sleep because it takes energy to stay awake. So here's something really important. You know what? The most calorie burning thing that your baby does is actually eat. So if they're not getting enough, they're kind of falling asleep sometimes too. And they may not wake to feed sometimes because they don't have enough calories. So that's why it's very important that we say, wake your baby to feed. And we give you all these different tactics. Some of my favorite ones are tickling the feet. One of my kind of like not so nice ones is cold hands on the abdomen. You can tickle their ear, stroke their jaw, but you got to get those babies awake to feed, because that's the only way they'll get more calories in, and then actually have the energy to burn those calories and eat more. Seems like a really backward thing, but it's really important to know for them. Kids can be kind of funny.
I'm having flashbacks of putting a cold washcloth on my baby's head to try and wake it up. I don't know.
Nobody likes their underwear changed when they're sleeping. So I just unravel a diaper and it wakes them up. But I think Dr. Hussein, you hit on something really important, and it's also the timing. So I hear often that a few things. One is that the baby's been eating for the last hour. And what we know from the literature is that after 30 minutes of eating, right, especially newborn babies, they are now burning more calories than they're ingesting. So generally speaking, the feeding session should last about 30 minutes. If the baby's looking around for the breast for a lot of time, they're losing a lot of calories. So that's one thing. And then the other is, if your baby is falling asleep at the breast or falling asleep with a bottle in their mouths, then I think that's a good opportunity to reach out to a lactation consultant or your pediatrician in order to be able to assess the baby's oral anatomy and make sure that the baby is not having any concerns sucking and swallowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great advice. And we've been getting a lot of questions about like how much for a certain age. In the email that we'll send you guys as a follow-up to this with the link for your free can, I'll also include our Bobbie feeding chart, which was put together by a pediatric nutritionist on our board. And it gives you sort of that blueprint for how much do you need month by month, and how many total ounces in a day, and our suggested size of bottles. So just even having some type of guide sometimes can really help you out in those early days. And then what to expect, as baby hits 4 months, when 4 months is when they actually have peak milk consumption, because they're not quite on solids yet and they're just guzzling that milk. So get ready, mom, because it's also about the same time that many women go back to work if they've had a 3-month maternity leave. And that's often, when we do see that friction of supply not meeting the demand for baby anymore. Is there any more questions as we kind of wrap this up? We're at almost 9 o'clock Eastern time. I really hope that this has been helpful for you guys. And hopefully, as a group of pregnant moms, we just, again, want to help you anticipate what may be to come and some of the options that are available out there for you, and just sort of educate you on what a potential feeding journey could be. We really, really appreciate you guys being here tonight. And I'm so grateful to this panel of wonderful ladies for chiming in. And of course, grateful to our friends at Hatch for having us tonight and supporting us. And thank you guys so much. So we will send you all a follow-up email in the next couple of days, and we will be sure to get in touch. And if you guys have any questions at all for us at Bobbie, you can DM us on Instagram. You can text our wellness and support team. It's a team of experts that are here to help you. I'll shout that number. I'll put it in the chat. It's 415-854-2500. Literally, like, just say hi. We like to say hi to people. Or
say that number again, Kim. 415.
It's 415-854-2500. You can also, let me put this in the panel, the attendees, and you can also just DM us on Instagram. We love to chat with you guys. So good luck, moms. You've got this. We're here for you if you need us. And best of luck to all of our moms that are about to have their babies here in the next few weeks. Super excited for all of you, and hopeful that you have a blissful feeding journey. All right. And with that, I think we'll wrap. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Have a great day.
Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.